TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuits!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Pearson and Blurnsville.
Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting Premier Podcast TV Party tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, we continue our journey from the corner to the deuces. We are looking at the great works of David Simon. We have covered the last 3 seasons and the movie of Homicide, Life on the Street, that he was an executive producer on and story editor or whatever it was. Last month we had a good old fashioned man cry and talked about The Corner.
Oh yeah.
But now, ladies and gentlemen, if you have been a longtime follower of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, you know that I'm a bit of a TV snob, and there is no finer fruit plucked from the most healthy tree, God's tree, the fruit of knowledge, the best TV show I have ever seen, the measuring stick of which I hold all other shows. Ladies and gentlemen, we are finally here. We are discussing tonight season 1 of The Wire. And of course, joining me, holding my hand, crossing that bridge, is Juicy J himself, Jesse Starcher. How do you do, sir?
The center square of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network bingo card, The Wire. It's finally time, man. It is time to talk about what you've talked about for a very, very long time, inside conversations, in things that you were just like, The Wire, and everybody's like, check mark, check. Yeah. So, buddy, this is something that I know you had held dear for quite a while. I heard you talk about it so much that finally, what was it? I think 2 or 3 years ago, I sat down and I was like, I'm going to start this show. Mark likes it an awful lot. Let's check it out. Sat down with the wife and started.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you know? I started the first season. We got through up to season 4. I think halfway through season 4, and then kind of fell off. But I really enjoyed what I was watching. So it was great to kind of go back and revisit this again as we are doing this project. So I was able to watch season 1 and actually finished it up yesterday with the wife again, enjoyed myself. So this means an awful lot to you. So I'll turn it over to you, sir. What do you got to say about it first?
It's funny. I don't rewatch a lot of television. Like I watch something, I watch it once and then I'm done with it. As over the years, as we've been doing these TV reviews, I tend to binge stuff closer to when we're reviewing it, so it's fresh in my head because I don't rewatch things. Do you know how many times I've rewatched The Wire? A lot.
Yeah.
We went to the Outer Banks when Lily was maybe less than a year old, somewhere in her infancy, and while we were in the Outer Banks, vacationing with my best friend and his family, I rewatched The Wire. During the time that I was going through chemo and I was bedridden a lot when I wasn't getting up to work, I rewatched The Wire. I also binged Game of Thrones, but I rewatched The Wire during that. I have, without anything else to watch, in my boredom, rewatched The Wire. I have rewatched this series so many times. There are parts of it where I'm just like, this isn't really important to the plot. This isn't important to the plot. We'll just fast forward through things.
Yeah.
Because I know exactly, I know the scene already, so I don't.
You know what what's meaningful, what's not. Yeah, I
right.
get you.
So like I think one of the rewatches I did, I like sped watched it because I'm like, I don't care about this. I'm like Bubbles, fuck that guy, and I just
Bubbles.
through.
No.
Oh,
don't be,
I
don't,
could get, I
don't fuck
cared so little
Bubbles.
about the Bubbles character.
Oh,
Why?
bummer.
Why? Well, first of all, what is this show? Let's talk about that real quick. According to the wiki, The Wire is a crime drama television series created and primarily written by author and former police reporter David Simon. The series was broadcast on cable network HBO in the United States. It premiered on June 2nd, my birthday, 2002,
Right.
and ended on March 9, 2008. And it nearly broke my wife. Comprising 60 episodes over 5 seasons. The idea for the show started out as a police drama loosely based on the experience of his writing partner, Ed Burns, a former homicide detective and public school teacher. Set and produced in Baltimore, Maryland, The Wire introduces a different institution of the city and its relationship to law enforcement in each season, while retaining characters and advancing storylines from previous seasons. The 5 subjects are in chronological order are the illegal drug trade, the port system, the city government and bureaucracy, education and schools, and the print news medium. Simon chose to set the show in Baltimore because of his familiarity with the season. Season 1 ran for 13 episodes, and it tells the story from the points of view of both the drug-dealing Barksdale organization and the investigating police detail. So, why do I love this show so much? One,
Can't you count the ways.
I am drawn to gritty realism. As people know, I'm not just a podcaster. I'm also a professional social worker. I have always been drawn to substance abuse, not doing the substance abuse, like I've been, providing substance abuse.
Just can't
counseling.
escape, and he hates Bubs. I don't know what the problem is.
Anyway, now I've always been drawn to the drug culture, either as somebody providing assistance, counseling, that sort of thing. A lot of my research papers when I was in grad school was about harm reduction and the effects of drug. What would be the social effects of drug legalization as opposed to continued criminalization of substance abuse. I like drugs, and I also a little bit about my history. From the ages of like birth to 12, I lived in an all-black neighborhood. I lived in a black neighborhood that had its fair share of drugs. So you could see like in the so this is Uniondale, New York, just in the same city that hosts the Nassau. I don't know what it's called now, but it was the Nassau Coliseum when I lived there. It's where the Islanders play. Saw a lot of professional wrestling back in the day there. Mm-hmm. And it was a halfway decent neighborhood, but it also had its fair share of drugs. And so I remember walking to school and there were crack vials in the street and heroin vials and stuff like that. Yeah, there were parks I was not allowed to go to because they were active drug dens. I went anyway because I was a dick as a child, just as an adult. When I could go, like I anytime I was like I'm going out and play with my friends. Well, don't go to Smith Street Park. There's drug dealers there. I'm like, I'm going anyway.
You subjected yourself to that, and you did not become a user or anything like that. So that's.
I mean, I was in elementary school.
Did you tell? I was going to say, well, it don't matter. Did you tell your parents, hey, look, I went and nothing ever happened to me? Everything was fine.
Beat me if I did.
Oh boy.
But yeah, so there's something about the African American culture that is also, just a part of who I am, a part of my personality, a part of my soul. And so between my natural sort of attraction to the drug culture and the drug culture and my natural attraction to elements of the African American culture, plus I've always been a fan of like police dramas. And detective stories, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
probably why I was a big fan of like Batman as a kid. And I've said this time and time again. If I'm not talking about The Wire, I'm talking about Batman. That I was drawn to Batman because before he became completely written to appease the fanboys and the incels and the neckbeards, Batman was a detective, in a fancy costume, not a ninja. He would become a ninja later. But when I was reading Batman comics as a kid, he was more of like a figure it out kind of a guy. And that's what I like. So between detective elements, drugs, and black folk, I remember, and I've told this story before, but I remember catching an episode of The Wire, just flipping through channels. And, we talk about inclusion, we talk about casting, and you generally don't see a lot of, especially like middle-aged black men all on camera at the same time. So when I saw a scene of The Wire as I was flipping through HBO, and I saw, I think it was like Lance Reddick, I can't remember the actor who plays the police commissioner, but
got them all right here.
yeah,
Frankie
Faison. Yeah.
Yep.
I remember, like I was like, holy cow! Like, why are all these like middle-aged black men all on the screen at the same time? Did we break a law somewhere? Like, what happened here? And I was immediately like hooked. Like, what are they doing? What are they talking about? I remember my first watch of The Wire, I couldn't understand half of what they were talking about because I didn't watch it from the beginning. I watched it from whatever episode I happened to have caught, and there's so much minutia in the show, in the language, that I was drawn to it. But I was drawn to it like one would watch a foreign film. Like, I don't know what you're saying. It's all in French.
Right.
but I'm weirdly interested, and I'm going to keep watching this and try to figure out what's happening in the show. And a few episodes in, I was hooked, and I had to go back and watch it from the beginning. Without being silly, I can honestly say I really do feel like The Wire is the best written show in the history of television. And not just because of the reasons that I mentioned, but because of the things that it talks about, the way in which it talks about it. Some people have described The Wire as being too real, being too sad. Like,
did they see the corner?
Yeah, really. The tacit recognition. Well, I think by the time you get to the end of The Wire, it's competitive with the corner. We'll get there in 4 months. But the tacit recognition that, most people who are not directly living in filth and squalor look at The Wire and go, this is not why I watch television. This is too real. This makes me feel too bad. Mm-hmm. But that's the thing that drew me to it. I like that. I like this reflection of the sadness and
gritty realism,
tragedy of American life.
Yeah,
I love it. I really do. I don't know what kind of person that makes me, but I just love the shit out of it. I love the language. I love the way that the characters talk to each other. I love the fact that it editorializes so many different issues in modern urban life. It years before Black Lives Matter and defund the police and all of that, this show was talking about the institutional racism in the police force and the militarization and how it dehumanizes the very people that they're sworn to protect. I love the fact that it talked about, something that Freakonomics also brought up, that, not every drug dealer is a millionaire. A lot of them are just, making just enough money for sandwiches and sodas.
Yeah, when in typical TV fashion, when you would see a drug dealer on the screen, your instant, like how they're going to paint that person,
right,
is going to be usually in a negative light. Number one, and number two, they're going to be, just like you said, dressed from head to toe, and they're going to, be wearing chains. They're going to look like millionaires. Yeah. But what this show does is it shows you that these people just, and it's in that happened. Well, let me put it away. You become show like, hey, always at each other, but they're just trying to live, trying to make money, trying to get by, trying to survive in the environment that they're in. And that's one thing that The Wire does, is it humanizes what you probably were detached from in what regular television will show you for that aspect of people.
It paints people that are often judged and, judged, ignored, treated harshly as sympathetic characters. Nobody in The Wire is innocent on either side.
Right.
Nobody in The Wire is all bad or all good. it treats the entire thing with a humanity I don't think that is often seen in American fiction on television.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why I hold it in such high esteem. So let's talk a little bit about what The Wire actually is. Essentially, the setup to The Wire is we have a detective who has become detached from what he's doing. He's frustrated, and he watches a member of the drug dealing organization, the Barksdale organization, essentially get away with murder. And he makes a point of saying that, you know, he's a homicide detective. This is McNulty.
Yep.
He's a homicide detective who he's sort of at the end of his rope, and he just sort of sees the futility of what they're doing. You know, it's just like solve a murder, another murder happens. Solve a murder, another murder happens. It just feels like he's shoveling shit against the tide. And he thinks like, you know, if we could just shut down the Barksdale drug organization, we could save lives.
Yeah, you make an impact.
Yeah, he becomes a crusader. And he has a friendly ear in Judge Phelan, who then puts pressure on Police Commissioner Burrell to say, hey, put a detail together. Let's do something about this Barksdale organization. And there's reticence and resistance to doing so because that's just not how things are done. You know? And so
that's on the surface.
Yeah,
there's a lot of other stuff they start to find out later that there's underneath because of that too.
Over the course of 13, why is it called The Wire? Because it's about how it is an editorialization about the militarization of policing and the futility of it all, and that there is a better way, but a better way is not as sexy and exciting as, you know, one would hope or one would believe. It is in fact a lot of sitting around, getting intel on your targets, collecting said intel, getting warrants, and bringing people in with enough probable cause that you'll win a trial if necessary.
Right. The tagline that I loved seeing when I was going through some of the images online was, you know, it had the poster and it said The Wire, then below it said listen carefully.
Right.
And it's all about like them trying to get that intelligence in order to put that case together, but they run into so much red tape. Just you think if we could put these these drug dealers right to jail.
Have you talked to people
follow the letter of the law?
Have you talked to people in your family who's like, the government's spying on us? You know, there's drones everywhere. You know, like
they fly over. They
really do. But you ever talk to just idiots who are like, oh my God, the government's listening in on our phone calls. Like, and what The Wire does is it basically says, like, you know how hard it is to do that? We are so protected. We're so protected by constitutional rights that it is nigh impossible for any kind of policing organization to truly spy on you without sufficient cause. And even, so just as an example, Lester Freeman says at one point, in order for us to listen to a call and use it as evidence, somebody has to be watching when that person uses the phone.
Right. If it's exactly. And I think, they got the whole non-pertinent rule. You got to listen to it for and then you turn it off if it's after 45 seconds or something like that if it's not pertinent. There's all this stuff that's set in place.
And it's all to protect your privacy. It's all to protect you. And yet because we're such a paranoid and idiotic culture.
Well,
I think oh my God, the government's spying on us. It's like, you have no idea. And that's one of the things I love about the show.
One of the things, granted, okay, yeah, laws are laws, but one of the things you can definitely say nowadays is that this was in 2002.
Right.
All right. We are now 20 years past that.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of technology has absolutely increased. It's way easier to do what they were trying to do back then. But again, there are laws in place to protect all that, but still a lot of things have changed too.
We joke about when we do these podcasts, the government's listening on your Amazon.
You're on the list now. Yeah. You mention one word of something.
Right. And we joke about it. But again, what The Wire talks about is the minutia of having to do all of those things. And it's not easy. Right. It talks about the how to get probable cause and the importance of it versus, the cops that just feel like this is an opportunity to beat the shit out of people in your neighborhood, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say the
mhm.
one thing that stood out to me, I think it's like right in the first bit of these few episodes, the distinguished difference between the technology that the state level has versus the federal government has, because McNulty has a friend that's I think he's in the FBI.
He's in the FBI,
yeah. And they walk in on this fancy thing, this fancy wire that they've got going on, all this technology, and they're looking around, they're like, they're still doing things by paper. They hardly have a computer that they can use on this state level of things. So that's another thing that they kind of see, is that the state only has so much money to allocate towards doing something like this.
Right. It's not even
the
like
federal
even
government has a bigger
the
pocket.
City of Baltimore, they're on the city budget.
Oh, that's right. The city. Yeah. So, I mean, it just probably, progressively goes down.
There's a line that Burrell says later on, we're all over the place, but there's a line that Burrell says in the show where he's like, your wire is costing me X amount of millions of dollars a day or some like crazy figure. Like, there is this. There's a lot of, like, Forrester, I think, says it too, where he's like, I'm not risking my career for something I don't care about. I'm paraphrasing. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of, we get by doing X. So all we're going to do is X. But is X effective? That's immaterial. It's accepted. There's an inertia that is talked about in The Wire about policing. And I just love it to death. So just to kind of wrap up this little first bit of our discussion here, Judge Phelan asks Burrell to set up a detail. The detail is like humps and fuck ups because they don't really want to do this. They want to do just enough to satisfy the judge so he'll go away.
Right.
There's no interest in actually bringing down this organization. So it's like, they're going to put just enough talent and interest in getting a few low-level drug dealers and call it a day, which is not what McNulty wants.
Right. They've been told to do it, so they're going to do it, but they're going to do it in the absolute worst way possible.
With low effort at best.
Right.
And McNulty is willing to trash his own career and reputation to fight with everybody to move this forward, because he believes with religious zealotry that if he could only bring down the Barksdale organization, things will get better. And it's funny because the great tragedy of The Wire is nothing makes anything better. We'll get to it with season 2, but my friend Chuck had the funniest line when we were watching it, because at the end of season 2, a truck opens up and drugs go one way and girls go another. And he looks at me and he goes, so the moral of the story is nothing stops drugs and bitches. Or drugs and whores. That's what it was. Nothing stops drugs and whores. And how that is the great tragedy that The Wire speaks to. So they realize that they're not going to, over the course of the 13 episodes, the detail becomes more invested in what they're doing. They believe in the cause. The cause moves them forward. And, everybody is hurt by this. Kima gets shot, like legitimately shot, and is out of commission there for a while. McNulty is demoted and put on the Harbor Patrol. Lance Reddick, who plays
Lieutenant Daniels
is like sent to property, I think. Like he gets he gets passed over for promotion, like shoved someplace he doesn't need to be. Lester Freeman, he ends up being taken out of the pawn shop unit and put into homicide, taking McNulty's place. Another guy who was initially sent in as kind of a spy from the homicide unit, who ends up, not doing what is asked of him. He gets demoted to the paddy wagon.
He's out patrolling the streets.
Yep. Which funny, because you'll catch up with him in like a later season. And I think it's season 3 when you find out he's on the paddy wagon. He's like, this is the best gig ever. I'm still paid as a homicide detective, and all I do is drive the van. It's great. I love that.
And that's another thing that this show shines a light on it. It's like, you know, these people, there's a lot of personal vendettas,
Yeah,
especially from the top down.
how little of this has to do with effective policing and more
Right.
of covering one's own ass.
Right.
You know,
Or making sure you get one over on that guy because he did something to you.
well, that's another thing that happens is, so they get the wire because they need the intel. The intel is what gives them the higher ups, and that's who they're after. That's the whole show. But at one point, and this is so funny because Lester gets really invested in what they're doing, and he's like, okay, now we need to start following the money. And they say the line a few times throughout the course of 13 episodes. If you follow the drugs, you get drug dealers. You follow the money, you don't know who you're going to get. And there's a whole sequence of events that has to do with shit. State senator.
Which he did not say at all this season, I don't think.
No, I don't think
he did not. He showed up one episode, maybe
Right.
two, but he did
Right.
not drop the shit.
Because Day-Day's money got took. Yeah, state senator. Shit. What's Isaiah Whitlock's character's name?
Oh, I don't have it in front of me. I thought I had all of them, but not that guy.
Yeah.
You know, all you have to do is say shit, and everybody's going to know.
Yeah, everyone knows who he is. But yeah, they start following the money, and that's how they end up on Day-Day, and Day-Day's got drug money in his car, but because he's connected to Burrell, they have to give the money back, and there's no charge, and there's no nothing. There's all, and what they realize is that the Barksdale organization is like, sending money to politicians. They're donating for favor and a variety of things. And there's I think there's a sequence where like politicians are giving the money back, and
they're like, just to let you know, we are returning all this money to these contributors.
And the's Burrell right in the middle of all this going, I just asked you to arrest some drug dealers. I didn't ask for any of this. And they don't want it.
Because then at that point it becomes a big deal, which probably means they're going to have to put more work in on this and probably make more enemies if that's the case, because I guarantee you Deputy Commissioner Burrell does not want his, he's all about the politics.
With Isaiah Whitlock and Lance Reddick when they're at opposite table, and they're like, this stupid motherfucker.
Right.
You better Burrell, you better tell this motherfucker what time it is. It's like, yikes.
And it's about that. Yeah, it's about that time that Daniels finally is just like, he's finally fed up with the bullshit, because they've been trying to ride his ass about falling in line, and he's pissed off about having the detail. And finally, he feels like they're making a difference. And now we got the senator coming in.
Right.
He's just like, well, whatever, man. If you haven't done anything, you ain't got anything to worry about.
I'm gonna wrap up the first half of this just by saying that they, it eventually pays off. They get almost everybody. The only one so along the way. And this is the second part of the story, and I really have to address this, and then I'm gonna turn it over to you for your notes and guidance, because we'll be here for another 6 hours if you let me talk. So I
took a nap before. We're good.
So we've been talking for this first half an hour really about the policing side of it, but we would be neglectful and derelict if we did not talk about the Barksdale organization. And the heart and soul of this show is Deangelo. So when we meet Deangelo, he allegedly shot a guy. And he's on trial, and that's what prompts this whole thing, is that the witness backs up on their story. He ends up getting not guilty, and that's what sends McNulty over the edge to go to Phelan and be like, what the fuck with all this? But you follow Deangelo's story, and Deangelo's caught between this place of, is this legacy of drug dealing my entire identity, or do I get to be my own man? And that's what he's struggling with. Also, is he hard enough? Is he does he have what it takes to be an effective leader in a drug organization, or is his heart too big? Is he too soft? And these are the things he runs up against. So he gets demoted within the first episode or two after shooting somebody and costing them money to get him out of prison. And he gets demoted from whatever apartment buildings they were dealing with to the projects. And that's where you meet Michael B. Jordan's character, Wallace. Where's Wallace? You meet Bodie.
Tell me, where's Wallace, motherfucker?
Bodie, who was Kenny from Oz, who's great in this. You meet Poot. And you get, and through that story, you're not only learning about, you know, how just caught and torn to pieces Deangelo is, but you're also kind of shown in this particular instance in 2002 Baltimore how drugs are dealt. And it's not just a guy standing on the street corner going, want drugs. You know, there's like a whole thing to it. They talk about you can't take the money and hand the drugs over, then you're implicated that way if someone's taking pictures, that sort of thing. So there's like a whole, you know, so you have this like Lord of the Flies-esque setting of derelict and poor children in a projects hired as lookouts and dealers and runners to all to sell heroin and crack to the locals who are lining up for blocks to get it. There's a really great little sequence where they're like giving away tasters. They're giving away free drugs so that people will come back to buy more drugs.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And just the utter abuse. Like, so I jokingly talked about Bubbles and how I don't care about his story.
Poor Bubs. Poor Bubs.
But Bubs and Johnny gets beat to shit.
Oh man, does he ever?
They're counterfeiting bills and they use it to try to buy drugs, and they fuck up and Johnny gets his ass beat. And that's what prompts Bubs to start snitching for the police, and that's what kind of that's what really gets the ball rolling for the investigation. But going back to Johnny and that scene with the tasters, just how abusive and dehumanizing the drug dealers are to the drug users.
Oh yeah.
You know, and then now contrast that scene with the sequence where her, Carver, and dipshit McGee, Presbeluski, yeah, show up to the high rises to just bully people, and Presbeluski hits a kid in the eye.
Right, fucks him up.
His line, by the way, later on is like, "Motherfucker trying to pit me for a Reese cup."
Yeah,
Shakespeare, people. Shakespeare.
That's right.
So good. But it's just Baltimore is presented on a city about to go over the edge, you know, and everyone's just tearing each other down. The drug dealers are tearing down the drug users. The drug users are tearing themselves down. The police are tearing down the drug dealers. Everyone, you know, and then, you know, the politicians and the higher ups are tearing down the cops. Like, everyone's just ripping each other to shreds.
Right.
And for what? Like, to what end? For what purpose? And I think that is one of, again, the great tragedies of the show is there is none. It's just the state of where we are right now, or at least where we were in 2002. So we meet Stringer Bell, and he's sort of the right-hand man to Avon Barksdale. Avon Barksdale is the one with the connect. He's the guy at the top of the table. He's the
kingpin.
Yep, he's the one with who organizes everything. And then we meet Weebay, who's their like personal assassin, essentially. Mm-hmm. I can't remember if it's Sticky Fingers or the other guy from Onyx who plays Bird. And then I'll talk about this, and then I'm gonna turn it over to you. We have to talk about the man with the shotgun who robs
Omar. Omar's
yes.
coming. Omar's coming.
So I remember like in a documentary about The Wire about how everyone wanted to be Omar until they saw him kissing a dude. He's so gay.
Oh boy.
Omar robs drug dealers, and to teach Omar a lesson, they kidnap his partner and boyfriend and torture him to death, which sets Omar up to give the cops intel, which again helps them take down members of the Barksdale organization, namely Bird, but Weebay as well is, I think, where that leads. So,
and I mean that sets Omar off too. I mean, it's not he's so upset that he's helping the police, which you wouldn't think that this person would do.
They initially approach him, and he's like, "I'm not going to stop you from doing what you're doing, but I'm not going to help either. That's just not how the game is played." Then they torture Brandon, and he was like, "Well, this is above and beyond what is called for in these types of things. Like, it's one thing to catch a bullet, you know, that's how the game is played. It's a whole other thing to go out of your way to torture somebody. Like, no, you people are not honorable and must be taken to, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's just a really interesting set of sequences where he's basically like, I can live with drug dealers, and the and the consternation and interactions that we have, the antagonism. I can live with the natural antagonism of me who robs drug dealers and drug dealers who will shoot back at me. Mm-hmm. What you did is so bad that it's beyond what is acceptable for me in my line of work, and now I must go to the cops to help bring you down because because even one man with a shotgun's not going to be enough.
It crossed that line.
Right. Omar is such a great poetic. Michael K. White, who is no longer with us. He's also on Boardwalk Empire and a bunch of other things, but mostly known as playing Omar with a big scar across his face. Brilliant, just a brilliant character. Later on in, I think it's like season 4, Omar has such a reputation. He's such a named character that as he walks down the street, drug dealers just throwing drugs at him.
Yeah,
he went to go get Cheerios from the corner store, and he comes back and he's got a new boyfriend at this point, and he puts the drugs on the table, and the guy goes, "They run out of Cheerios." There's nothing funny about The Corner, but there were some really funny parts to The Wire. But all right, Jesse, I've done my 30 some odd minutes of gushing wildly about The Wire. What are some of the notes that you have that you want to talk about?
Okay. All right. Well, let me just, I want to go ahead and kind of give you some of my favorites that happened throughout this series. I will tell you that my favorite character in this series is Lester Freeman.
Yeah.
I really identify with this guy.
Lester Freeman, baby.
Oh man.
Hey, how many years was he in the pawn shop?
Oh crap!
Was it like 14 years and
like 36 hours? Because he made somebody mad,
right?
He made somebody upset, and they shut him on a shit detail.
Yep.
And
just forgot about him.
He's a good cop, and that's one of the.
He was a homicide detective,
right? One of the terms that you hear a lot that I really had never heard until I started watching The Wire was good police. That person's good police,
right?
And Lester Freeman's good police. He is a person who
definitely natural police.
It's good. It's cool to see him, get in on this team, which he doesn't even look like he's going to contribute anything at the beginning of this.
Well, you remember what Deangelo says about him when they're talking about who they have, when he's trying to bargain to get Sindor, and he's like, well, who do you have? And he's going through the names, and it's like, this guy's a drunk, this guy's a fuck up, and then he gets to Lester Freeman. He's like cuddly house cat. Right. Meanwhile, Lester knows his shit, and he's natural police.
He does. It's great. It's great to see him kind of evolve on the team.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I had listed down here on my notes. We talked about the war on drugs and politics. That's just that's all over this show.
Yeah.
The other thing is the evolution of these bunch of fuck ups coming together. I ain't call them fuck ups, but these bunch of people who were just pulled together because they didn't think they would gel enough to get anything done, become a team and actually try to make an impact with what they're doing. Now, granted, there's a lot of bumps along the way, but by the end of this thing, these guys are learning to work together.
Right.
And that kind of leads into one of my, I have a 3 favorite scenes from The Wire season 1.
Is it one of them where they're retracing the murder of the one lady out in the county and they just say fuck the entire time?
Number 2 on the list.
Yes.
The apartment scene where they all say fuck. That's the whole time. The whole time it's McNulty, huh?
We just
reenact it.
Hey, Jesse.
I cannot reenact that. The fuck. Fuck me.
Fuck.
That's such a great scene.
Really, again, brilliant.
And what it does is it in a humorous light, it shows you police work being done. Like these guys, you watch it from them stepping in there.
Let's do an anatomy of a scene. They are there on a cold murder case. they are going back. So if you're the setup to that is they're going back over old cases that they can link to the Barksdale organization. And Jay, their sergeant's like, go look at this one. This one might work. And they're like reticent to do it. They're like, this doesn't match the profile. Like, this doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And Bunk even said, and Bunk is McNulty's partner. He's always with the pinstripe suits and all of that. He's sort of McNulty's Jiminy Cricket. He's like trying to stop McNulty from
drunk Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah, well, they're both drunk. But I mean, like, if you think about it, like, Bunk is good police, and Bunk is the one like just trying to get McNulty to not set himself and everything else on fire. McNulty is so filled with indignant rage that he doesn't, that he cuts off his nose to spite his face. And there's Bunk going, maybe put the knife down. So Bunk says to him when Jay's like, because there's a lot of BS and there's a lot of like, ooh, do this too. This should be part of the detail, but it really doesn't. It really isn't. It's just like they're just trying to get over. But in this particular case, Jay's like, no, I think this is something. I think this will be useful to you. And McNulty's like, just suspicious and untrustworthy, untrusting, and he won't do it. And Bunk's like, why don't we do it anyway and make a sergeant happy? Like, there's always Bunk going, could you please see the forest for the trees, you self-righteous, self-centered dick face.
For once, do what they're asking you to do.
Yeah, right. And so they're there to figure out what all took place. And the anatomy of that scene, it's funny because they say, it's memorable because everyone says, because of the fuck thing, it's the only line of dialogue in the entire thing. It's just them saying fuck over and over again.
Great.
But what they're really doing is they're looking at a scene that has already been cleaned up and is months old. They're looking for a bullet. Yeah. So they have pictures. They're trying to figure out where the body was, and then they're examining things, and they find, I think, like half a bullet's in the wall, the other half's in the fridge.
Yeah, well, I do know that they pulled the slug out of the fridge,
right?
And then they found the casing.
They found the casing in the grass. Yeah,
right.
So they're doing things with like tape measures and angles and shit.
You're trying to figure out like what the hell. I remember I watched it again and I'm like, what the hell is he doing with the tape measure? Oh, well, he's actually measuring how far this casing would have flew from the gun if the gun would have been right there, and then that led him to the casing. And I was like,
the amazing amount of minutia, the amazing amount of detail in the event of shooting a gun at a human being.
Yeah,
like the things. So I don't think people know what all it takes to be like a homicide detective, but there's a certain degree of being able to examine details and a certain degree of science and math that goes into it. It's all pretty brilliant. And that's what that scene's all about.
Right. So love that. You took one right off my list. I was talking about the team. We led right into that. My one that has to deal with the team itself is the desk incident. I
was thinking about that. What a metaphor that is.
Oh, that's exactly what I have written down here. It is a great metaphor for what is actually happening in this show. You got two teams. Well, you got a team not communicating at all. They're not talking. One's got an idea of what they want to do. The other one has an idea of what they want to do. They both are supposedly working for the same goal.
Each other.
But to get that couch in wherever it's supposed to go, they're working against each other to do. And it's very simplistic.
The setup, so people understand, is Herc is trying to get a desk into the office, but everyone thinks he's trying to get the desk out of the office, and it's jammed in the door. And so you have 4 and 5 like burly men all trying to like do something with this desk.
They're pushing against each other.
And they're pushing against each other.
Oh,
again, what a metaphor from modern policing.
Lester's sitting there watching the whole time, and he knows what they're doing, and he doesn't even know if he wants to say anything to him. He's like, should I say something? I don't know. And then, oh yes, it is a great encapsulation of a lot of what you see in this show. Another scene, since you took one of them off my list here, the other scene that kind of humanized things for me, we see these two opposing forces. We see the law versus the drug dealers, but when they get Bodie and beat the crap out of Bodie in the when they're interrogating him, I think they lay it on him, I think. And then like they're waiting for Juvie to come pick him up.
Mhm.
And he says something. I can't remember what it is that actually makes them kind of go, oh, well, hey, you know, they see him as a person for a second, and then next thing you know, they're sitting there playing pool against each other in the break room. So again, that's one of my favorite parts about this show is like it's not always just the cops versus the villains, the drug dealers here. It is two human beings, and that gets it's not in this season. I think it's in a later season, maybe next season, when they run into each other. You know, the drug dealers run into the cops
at the movie
movies.
theaters.
Yeah, and you're like, well, what are they going to do? They're going to have a big old brawl? No, that they're just going to talk about what they're doing.
Right.
So,
well, this season there's the basketball game where you meet Proposition Joe.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know, and then Herc and Carver are there, and they're just hanging out with Bodie and Poot watching the basketball game.
Yeah, right. It's something that, you know, these are people, folks. They're not just characters; they are people. So, okay.
Can I tell you one of my favorite scenes?
Absolutely,
because it illustrates. You know, there's only so many resources to go around, and sometimes resources have to be reallocated depending on what the new priority happens to be. There's a line later on, I think it's season 3 or 4, where Carcetti becomes mayor, and they're talking about the bowls of shit. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Burrell when he's talking to Daniels, when Daniels is taking over as police commissioner or deputy commissioner or whatever it is.
Okay.
And he's like, 1 minute they're telling you make quality arrests. The next minute they're saying, well, you know, wipe the horse out of the town square. And the next minute they're telling you something completely antithetical to what they just told you. You think I'm a hack. Maybe I am. But wait until you have to try this job. And it goes, and that's why I thought it was the same bit, but it's a different bit where they're talking to Carcetti about the bowls of shit. You know? But the reason why I brought up a later season is to talk about what happens at the FBI building. So they have this, you know, McNulty's whole thing is that the Barksdale organization is dropping bodies left and right. They're killing people worse than any terrorist would ever do in America in 2002. But because it's 2002, what happened in 2001, Jesse?
That would be the towers falling, and we are going to focus on terrorism.
Right. And so
international terrorism.
Right. And so what the show talks about is the FBI changing priorities to big time drug dealers to terrorism and moving resources to deal with that. So there's McNulty's like, but this is a terrorist organization. These people are terrorizing the Baltimore community. Right. But unless one of them name is Ahmed,
yeah,
you know, and he's claiming to be a Muslim, who gives a shit? And McNulty's like, murder is murder. Like, if you do it with a plane or if you do it with a handgun, you know, what difference does it make? Murder is murder. And they're like, well, it's not the right kind of murder for us.
Yeah.
And then even better, they're like, if you've got like political things we can do, if you've got racketeering we can go after, we'll help you with that. And then they wanted to turn Avon Barksdale into a cooperator. And McNulty's like, suck my dick. Like,
yeah, he had enough of that. And
right. You know, and I love that scene for that reason.
Right. It just shows you how politics influences what's going, you know, the people that you believe are villains. And
the word is complexity.
Right.
The Wire deals with the complexity of systems. This is something I learned about in grad school. But, you know, if you think about, like, there are different systems interacting with each other and how complex that can be, and that much like the desk incident, you have organizations working against each other because they have different priorities.
Yep.
This is The Wire.
Yeah. Yeah. I see it with my own job. I see where priorities are, you know, something is way up here and something is way down here on a project that we're working. And when I see the one down here, I'm looking at this and I'm going, man, that seems awful important. You know, that seems like it would be costing a lot of money. But because it's not up here and it's way down here,
right?
You know, it's just getting this short. So that's exactly how I'm sure the FBI is looking at what's going on with McNulty. They're saying, "Oh, this is not a priority now. We don't care about drugs. We're not."
Meanwhile, McNulty's like, "My city is being, you know, torn to shreds. and you have the
Right.
power to do something about it. And that is an ongoing theme throughout all 5 seasons of The Wire. Those in power do not, for whatever the reasons are, and the frustration therein. Again, we'll get to it when we start talking about seasons 3, 4, and 5. But you have Carcetti, who means well and wants to do the right thing. I mean, he's searching for power, as all men do, but he in particular is like, I see the problems inherent in the city, and I do want to do something about it. And that goes to the bowl of shit monologue about how, I can't wait to talk about these seasons, because the conversations that take place in City Hall, where he's talking to like the one black woman who, who's just like, nope, you can't do that. And if you do that, you're going to piss off the ministers. And these are the people that I represent. And if you piss off the ministers, you might as well just go home. Like, you can't get anything done. It is an example, a microcosm of the greater issues you have, like in federal Congress, of you have these two different parties, and there's so little that can be done because they have their own masters to serve. That's the phrase that I go back to when I think about what The Wire is. It's about, it's about serving various masters, and those masters don't all agree. And they have different agendas, they have different priorities, and so it's so hard. The right thing is easy to identify and almost impossible to do. That's the lesson, and that's the tragedy. All right, next on your list.
I did have. I mean, what I was going to lead my list off with was I enjoy watching Prez be a fuck up and then actually become useful. He's probably a nice little shining light in this.
Can I tell you? I think it's season 2. The cold open is Walk the Line, and he's like rearranging the board so that it makes sense. It's like one of my favorite scenes of all 5 seasons of The Wire at all.
Nice.
I love that. Prez, like when he figures out the code, so he cracks the case wide open.
Yeah,
because
he's the one guy that shot his gun in office. He discharged his own firearm in the office. And everybody's like, you're right then. You're writing this guy off.
Right.
This guy.
And he's the one that blinded the kid, who then was like, later on, was like, you're trying to pimp me for a Reese cup. Not even Reese's. Reese. Apparently Baltimore has its own dialect. But
it's Balmer, sir.
Balmer.
Not Baltimore.
Yeah, Balmer County. Balmer County. They say it so many times, I legitimately thought it was pronounced Balmer. Like I was like, it's not Baltimore, it's just Balmer. It's something else entirely. Anyway. And shooting it into the office. Guy that figures out what the beeper code is.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. Like, and that's the other thing that the show talks about, is not every cop needs to be Herc. You don't need to be jumping out of the squad car tackling people. You can be the in-office guy who's, there's an entire scene of like Sindor, Lester, and Przybylewski following the money and like, doing the minutia of figuring out where does all this drug money go, and what does that tell us about what does that tell us about our enemy? It's great.
Right. I had Lester Freeman. One of my favorite quotes from him was about how everybody's name is on a piece of paper somewhere. Right. And you don't really realize how, like, okay, if somebody wanted to track you down, they could track you down. It's going to happen. You've either got your name on something, because Avon is a very, very disciplined criminal.
Yeah.
Very disciplined.
When they finally catch up to him and arrest him in the strip club, and he's like, might as well open the safe. No need in ruining a good safe.
He's just sitting there waiting for him to come in.
Right.
It's like, look at these motherfuckers out here. They're watching them from cameras, getting ready to raid the place. And I mean, everything's empty except for the safe. And they're just sitting there. And they walk in, and he gets up and puts his hands behind his back. But he's so disciplined, almost to the point where you think he's paranoid. There's probably I'd imagine there's absolutely some element of that, but he is very disciplined. He has his rules, don't talk in the car. Don't talk business outside, do this, that, and the other. And Omar almost gets him. And that's where he realizes, oh shit, I need to really buckle down, because it's very telling that I'm letting some of these rules slip. But anyway, yeah, it's to watch them catch up with Avon, and because that's the whole show is them trying to just nail this guy, and he is just a step ahead. The one scene, which I've seen as probably one of the better scenes, people tout this scene as one of the best scenes of season 1, where they're tracking Avon. I think it's after the game. After the basketball game, and
he leads him on a wild goose chase.
Yeah, and then the next thing you know, at the end of it, he's coming up the other way as Lieutenant Daniels is going the other way, and he's just waving his finger. That's not going to get me. It ain't happening.
My last favorite scene I want to talk about, and I would be mad at myself if I didn't bring this up because it is probably my most favorite scene of the entire 5 seasons of The Wire. It's so funny to me. But it rings so true, and it's just brilliant. So Weebay has killed a lot of people.
I knew you was going to this one. This is a
so
great
many.
Scene.
He's killed so many, and he escapes to Philadelphia. But they get some evidence together. They're able to track him down. They set up an entire thing to draw him out and tackle him to the ground and bring him down. They have him dead to rights on a whole bunch of murders,
including Kima. That's what
killed.
Really set this off, is that Kima got shot. Now we got to down police.
Right. I mean, he didn't kill Kima. Kima lives, but
right. But he
is part of so they have him dead to rights on so many murders. The point to the point where if they wanted to, they could give him the death penalty. They take the death penalty off the table if he's willing to admit that he murdered people. And because he is loyal to the Barksdale organization, because as long as he does the right thing, they will send money to his family. And so he knows that he's not going to get death. He knows that there's no way he's not going to get life. And he's loyal. When they start talking to him about other murders, he just starts taking murders just to take them. Just so nobody else. Well, hang on. I was going to get there. Initially, it's basically, I will admit to all the murders I can to save anyone else from being arrested for those murders. Like, I'll just sacrifice myself because what more could they possibly do to me? I'm already done. So I might as well be a help to the organization by taking murders from Bird, taking murders from this one, taking murders from that one. I'll take them all. I'll admit to all of them because there's nothing more they can do to me. And loyalty will be rewarded. But he doesn't just do it. They offer him a sandwich and more potato salad. And he literally says, for another sandwich and potato salad, I'll admit to more murders, sure. And they give it to him. They get him another sandwich.
Oh man. Didn't have the potato salad. They had coleslaw. He was a little upset about that. But
he was
irritated. Took the murders anyway.
But what a brilliant line. He was like, for a pita sandwich. I don't even know what kind of sandwich he was eating. For a pita sandwich and potato salad, I'll go a few more. Like, he's just so nonchalant about it.
Right. He has
If I ever start murdering people, I literally will. I want to do that. I'm like, I will admit to more murders for a pita sandwich and more potato salad.
Oh man,
that's so good. It's not nearly as good, but the sequence with Bird, boy, they got the right rapper for that, man. I think it's Sticky Fingers. From Onyx, and he's just like cunt, and it's just like everybody that talks to him, he's like, fuck you fat ass, and they beat the living piss out of him.
Yes, they do. Oh wow, do they ever?
Man, it's so funny. It's okay. Anything else from you?
Well, we're closing in on the hour mark here. I want to go ahead and throw it to you here real quick with a question.
Sure.
So we reached the end of the season. We watched the Avon Barksdale organization go on trial. Basically, they're up in front of court and they're bringing the charges. They're going to arrest these guys,
and they don't get nearly the amount of time that they were bargaining for with the amount of murders that took place.
Right. I mean, because they at this point, the pressure is on to bring these people in. You're costing the city money by doing this. And now we finally reached, you bring these people in on the charges that you have. So everybody starts, getting sentenced or whatever. McNulty is there. Bunk kind of tells him what Weebay just did. And then
hang on one second.
Christ, what the fuck did I do? You happy now, bitch?
There it is.
Yep.
There it is. That's exactly what I was leading to. So why don't you
Mhm.
go ahead and tell everybody what your interpretation of what McNulty is talking
He
about there.
burned his own career. He nearly cost the judge his judgeship. He brought undue attention to a police force that did not want it. He cost other people on that team their positions, possibly their careers, and one almost her life. And it was a drop in the bucket. All of that for a handful of years that Avon won't do the whole thing. You know, the tacit realization they spent months and millions trying to bring this organization down, and it did not have the effect that he wanted. And, you know, it was like, what was all of this for? Was it all for nothing? And then the next time you see McNulty, he's on the boat.
Yep. Bunk throwing him some liquor. Keep yourself.
I just think about how many TV series a season, you know, the series finale or the season finale is like a happier ending. You know, things are wrapped up, and how every season of The Wire ends in tragedy. Right. Everyone is worse off. Like everyone. Nobody gets out alive. Nobody gets out clean. Think about like season 2, how bad a shape the ports are in, how much worse the police, you know, and the Barksdale organization are in. Season 3, you know, Bunny getting demoted for legalizing drugs, essentially. Mm-hmm. How much worse off they are. You know, season 4 and season 5 are basically parts 1 and 2 of essentially what I've called like the Marlowe Stansfield seasons. Mm-hmm. But you know, it deals with all like the bodies and the vacants, and it's like it's not not so much worse off. The bodies were there, but you know, the realization like, oh my god, that's how Marlowe got away with like taking over the city's drug trade and killing as many people as he did, and no one saw anything. He was putting bodies in vacants, and they only figure it out towards the end of season 4. But like the kids are all worse off. Like the kids who were not in great shape to begin with are all worse off by the end of season 4. And in season 5, McNulty's like lost his job. You know, Lester has been forced into retirement. Daniels has quit. Like,
at the end of season 1, mm-hmm. Lester seems to be like maybe getting the better end of what's happened mm-hmm. As a result of the events of this season. However, you realize that he has to work for Rawls.
Right.
And Rawls is a shitbag throughout this thing. He's a hell
He has got some funny fucking lines, though.
Oh, does he?
These are for you, McNulty. These are for you.
And Fat John Cena. I cannot remember his name.
Jay.
Yeah.
The sergeant.
So them two, like him completely kissing Rawls's ass mm-hmm. every time he's in the room.
Oh my God. Jay's soliloquy about giving McNulty a chance that starts with him jerking off and not being able to focus because he's thinking about McNulty.
That's writing right there.
Oh my God.
Great writing.
They could have, that scene could have been so much simpler, but no, we have to go through a long, flowery explanation of how he was all set up to beat that meat. And he's like, but I can't because McNulty's a good cop and I don't want to see him hurt.
Oh,
brilliant.
Man. Yeah, but yeah, man. Okay, have you had that scene sitting there on your soundboard or whatever for?
Yeah, I was. The intention was to play it every time I brought up The Wire.
Okay, all right. Well, hey, you know it worked perfectly for what I was setting you up for here. No, we did not even plan that, folks. No. We didn't talk a lot about Bubs. This will be the last thing I kind of say, but Bubs is kind of like, now that I've seen The Corner, Bubs is the corner of this show. You know, he is the guy that we're watching go through these friend to Kima, but you know, he's struggling with his own drug addiction, and we kind of watch him. Obviously, he's an essential part to The Wire, just like you said. He's helping identify some of these suspects with the whole red hat strategy that they were doing. But you know, it adds that personal element to this guy, and I'm invested with Bubs. I want to see this guy get better, and you watch him get better, and then he doesn't get better, and it's heartbreaking. But yeah, it's the corner element.
The tragedy of Bubs is that he doesn't want to be a heroin addict, but he can't help it, and that he's such a broken individual. Like, you'll learn more about Bubs over the course of the next 4 seasons, and and I talk about how like nobody is better off by the end of The Wire. Bubs is, but Bubs is going to be replaced by Dookie, and again, we're back to the desk again. As one comes in, the other one's going out. Everything is zero sum, which I keep using the word tragedy, but I don't know how else to put it. Like, that is the great sadness of The Wire, is after the end of 5 seasons, what all have we accomplished here? Not much. Right. We've moved forward, but somehow stood still at the same time. Again, it's the desk. But so I said, when we, Bubs is motivated by revenge. He's motivated by wanting to avenge Johnny's beatdown. And just again, that's the kind of similarity that Bubs has to Omar, where it's one thing to get an ass whooping. It's a whole other thing to do what they did to Johnny for no good reason.
Right.
So it's like there are 2 instances where Avon Barksdale's crew would have remained untouched and and unmolested by the Baltimore police detail, but because they went too far, they aggravated 2 different people who were willing to cooperate with the cops just to bring them down. Which I think I never really thought about it until just now. Like, how much of the detail success is hinged upon the Barksdale crew crossing lines and going way too far
with either criminals or drug dealers, or drug addicts, and that's it. It's all in the game, as they're saying. It's all in the game.
Yo, you got them jumbo 6s? It's all in the game.
All in the
it's all in the game. It's all in the game, Jesse.
Yeah, buddy. No kidding. Well, hey, I've said my piece. This is your turn. I get to look at you and say, is there anything left unsaid, Mark Radulich?
I honestly could have talked for another hour about this, but I think people get it. The show is about the ugly underbelly truth of urban society and policing. I think the Wire is more relevant today than it was 20 years ago. And it is 20 years, 2002.
Yeah, it is.
20 years later, we're still we're still debating. Do we decriminalize or, and go to harm reduction models, or do we, continue to militarize the police? We're arguing about whether or not we should defund the police, or whether we should continue to throw, military resources at them. There's a question about what is effective policing. How should your local sheriffs and police departments interact with the public to build trust? Do they want to build trust? The whole Black Lives Matter is speaks to the incidents of the police going overboard and killing people unnecessarily. But I tell you, working in correctional healthcare as I have for the past 10 years, if I had a cop here right now, if I had a deputy here right now, they would be telling you, or people who follow statistics, it's not, it's not much ado about nothing, but it's certainly the amount of like unnecessary force or unnecessary kills and stuff like that is infinitesimal compared to the amount of incidents where people are arrested and everyone followed the rules and was appropriate. But that's the conversation that needs to be happening, and it is happening, and that's the relevance of The Wire, I guess is my point. That 20 years later, we're still talking about all of this stuff. We're still struggling through it. We're still trying to, when we talked about The Boys, I talked about how like we can't decide what is toxic masculinity and what is just regular good old-fashioned masculinity. Right now we are still debating what is good policing and what is bad policing, and it should be more common sense than all that, but apparently it isn't. We're still struggling with this. And that's what The Wire talks about. What is good policing? What is bad policing? How, what helps the community? What hinders the community? What do we do? What social societal things are going on that creates an environment in which poor kids will turn to drug dealing. How do we effectively deal with that? You know, these are all questions 20 years later we still can't seem to answer. That's the beauty of this show. It's extremely well acted. It's extremely well written. Baltimore itself really shines as a character in the show. Like it definitely feels if there's a lot of character to the city of Baltimore. So that's really it. That's all I have to say. We'll do season 2 next month, and over the course of the next few months, finish this up. I will talk more about it. It's funny now that we've done this, and we're at an hour and 10 minutes. I didn't know how to deal with this show because I didn't want to go episode by episode or even character by character. I just kind of wanted to just talk about it. So I don't know if anyone listening. I mean, I would assume they could pick up on like the passion I have for this and what it means to me, and how the show has spoken to me over the years. But I don't even know if I did a great enough job kind of like telling people what this show is. Like, it's so big. It's not unwieldy. It's just so big and it's so important. I don't feel like an hour and 10 minutes was enough, but I don't want to be here for 5 hours.
You can do the movies by minute method and do a Wire episode like every minute by minute and talk about that. Do you think that would satiate your passion for this?
I think I would go
show?
Nuts.
Omar's whistling again. Minute number 933.
The farmer in the dell. Jesse, do you have any final thoughts here before we move on?
David Simon's knocking it out of the park here. This is The Wire. This is this is what
it.
brought you.
I mean, I haven't watched Generation Kill, so I don't know this for sure. But I mean, when I think about like Treme and Show Me a Hero and The Deuce, nothing he's done has been as good as The Wire. I mean, stuff has been close. Treme was good, but again,
all three of those things I haven't seen yet. I've never seen either three.
I love porn. The Deuce is great. It's not as good as The Wire. I love New Orleans, as I said to my friend earlier this evening. Not as good, not even close as good as The Wire. Like, I was so excited for Treme after The Wire ended. I'm like, oh, more David Simon. And I watched Treme and I'm like, this isn't as good.
Can't follow it up.
No. It was brilliant and it is unique and there's never been anything quite like it since. So, all right, that is the end of me gushing about The Wire season 1. Earlier in the week, we reviewed Prey. Didn't do nearly as much gushing.
You guys were mean to that show.
Jesse and I reviewed Kaiju Score, of which we were very nice about. Yes. This weekend I will be away, but we've got some canned ham for you. We've got no bananas. We've
no bananas today.
On Sunday we will have a Damn You Hollywood re-air of our review of Pete's Dragon from a few years ago, the remake. Back when I was going through CAR-T for my second bout of cancer, Pat Mullen called in while I was at the hospital, and we did a commentary for Over the Top, which was fantastic. No, wait, I don't know if that one. No, sorry, the one I did while I was in the hospital was Iron Eagle. So, but we did do one for Over the Top, and that'll be airing on the 22nd. And then Damn You Hollywood will be reviewing The Gray Man on Tuesday. Jesse will have an Unspoken Issues for Ghost Rider 2099. And then 5 Finger Death Punch Afterlife review on the 25th. So, plus a new Metal Hammer of Doom Extra, and which I will tell you more sexy stories. Jesse, do you love my sexy stories? Yeah, buddy.
They're entertaining.
All right. Anything else before we go?
Nah, man. I can't wait to talk about season 2 now. It's something new to watch, something new to talk about.
Yep. All right. For Jesse Starcher, this has been, and I am Mark Radulich. This has been From the Deuce. Hi, welcome to the Radulich and Broadcasting Network.
Let's do this whole show over again.
We'll start all over again. Fuck it, we'll do it live. From the corner to the deuce, the great works of David Simon. For Jesse Starcher, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.